This episode is brought to you by Women Like Esther magazine. Thank you so much, Women Like Esther magazine, for joining Beholder Beauty as one of our sponsors.
Welcome back. Today we're joined by Nichole Suvar, author of the new book, I Don't Have to Hold It All Together, Cultivating the Peace of Eden When Feeling Overwhelmed. Nichole, welcome to the show.
Hi, Deborah. It's so good to be here.
It's so good to have you here. It's nice, and I'm so excited to dive into your book. But first, let's start with you telling our listeners a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I'm a author and speaker. I speak on mental wellness through God's design. I am married to my high school sweetheart. We're going on 24 years now. We have three teenagers. One's in college, one is graduating from high school this year, and the other one is about 2 weeks from getting her license. So we are in a very full season of life.
Oh, that is so nice. That's nice. And so we're going to jump into your book. And I have the opportunity to begin reading it. And it's just such an exciting concept, the whole Eden part of it. But so your book talks about cultivating, people might not know what I'm talking about yet. So let's first talk about the premise of your book.
Sure. Yeah. I don't have to hold it all together is really like the overarching that is the entire theme of the book is helping the reader see that it is not their job to hold it all together. Although, because it's something, I mean, myself included, we kind of write books. Authors write books for themselves. Like that's kind of how God calls us to write, that I need reminded that it is not my job to hold it all together. And so I walk the reader through the reasons why it is not and what they can do instead. And it goes back to the garden, all the way back to Eden, all the way from the very beginning. God was already holding it together. He's holding it together now, and he continue will in the future. And how there are attributes of Eden that when first created in the garden, and despite the fall happening, some of those gifts are still present with us today. God has allowed them to be throughout the world, not just in that single garden. And they are ways for us to connect with him and his peace that he has.
And so that is where the phrase cultivating the peace of Eden comes from.
Yeah.
And is that so? Do you want to go into that a little bit more? And then how do we apply it to this sense of being so overwhelmed in our lives today?
Yeah. So to cultivate means that like you think with a garden, if you have your own little garden or you've got little potted plants or whatever, when you cultivate, you're kind of digging up the soil, you're planting the seeds, you're doing the watering, but you are not the one that is causing those plants to grow. So you are doing your part. There's this intentional action that you have to do. You can't just be like, well, I'm going to have a garden, but then you don't go out and do anything about it. You have to do your part. And so that's the cultivating part is what is up to us. But ultimately, whatever we're doing, we have to acknowledge the fact that we are not the one who has the ultimate control of it all, and we're also not in charge of the outcome. Like we can cultivate a garden, but there are sometimes we are surprised by what exactly comes out of that garden, even if like the efforts that we have, or sometimes like the efforts haven't been the best, but yet God still supplies a beautiful harvest. So the cultivating part is helping us realize that we have to take intentional action to cultivate, to bring about these parts of Eden that God has left for us here. We need to go out and find them. We need to help them grow in our lives. But ultimately, we're looking to our Father to be the one who is supplying.
And let's talk about those because you mentioned that a little bit earlier that we have, so he's given us some of these gifts after the fall to stay with us.
Mhm.
And let's talk about what are those, how can we look for them? How can we, with the garden metaphor, apply that to our lives?
Yes. So the first one is what I start with because all of these other attributes will not be fully realized in our life if we do not do the first one. And the first one is our communion with God. And it goes all the way back to when we were looking at in the garden where the Father walked with his creation. There is that one line where it says, in the cool of the morning, like when he was walking with his people that he created. And though the fall has separated it in the fact that we don't have his physical presence like Adam and Eve had, but yet he, first and foremost, had the plan for Jesus to allow that veil to be ripped, to allow us to again approach his throne. So we have that first, and then now we have the Holy Spirit that is with us at all times. And when it comes to communion with God, also like in Christian circles, our first thought communion, we think of like bread and wine, we think of that sacrament. But communion, another word for it, and really this is like in other parts, not just in Christian circles, communion is a close fellowship. It's not just like a sometimes friend. It is someone that you know intimately. It's someone who you're walking side by side with. And so you're going throughout your day with the thought and the heart intent that he is always present. So at any moment you start having a conversation with him. It's it's not feeling like you're like, well, I did my 5 minutes this morning and now the rest of the day is mine. It's seeing like every moment can be holy because every moment he can be with us in it.
I
So that's
love
just,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the first one. Another one, I mean, I have a whole chapter on how just the outdoors, how God has designed creation to support us in our bodies and us as humans, not only just to remind us that he has it all in control. I mean, you could just take a walk through the woods, or sometimes I'm just sitting on my front porch and could just look at what's around me and just you think about like how he provides for the birds and how trees provide the oxygen for us to breathe and for we support them with the way that we breathe. And so there's just the intimately how he has created all of creation to support all of the rest of his creation.
Mm.
Another one is rest. And that God has designed us in a way that we have to stop. We as humans, like so often, if we've got this to-do list that we tell ourselves, like, well, I will treat myself. I do this all the time. I will treat myself to a break once I get this done. And the fact is, like, even though I get done with that list, there's always something else that's added. And it gets to the end of the day, and I haven't built in any time of rest throughout until I'm crashing in bed at night. And how he, and even at night, you want to keep going because there's still things to do. And the fact that he has built rest into us to remind us that we are not God.
Mm.
We are finite. There is a part of us that has to end. And when the physical act of stopping and resting is one way that we communicate and say, I am not God. I do not have all this in. This is all not under my control. I am trusting God to be the one to provide. And so it's not only like you've got every single day, you have that reminder when you have to go to bed at night, you have the reminder that like your body needs to rest. And he did that in the example of the seventh day after creation, he rested. God didn't need to rest. He wasn't tired, but he built that in so that we can understand the fact that even you got every day, but then even every 6 days, you need a whole day to completely shut down, shut out the world, and just focus on the Father.
Let's go a little bit into backstory about you, about your struggle with anxiety, because I think that we are talking how people without anxiety
Mhm.
can, how your book is going to be just a wonderful blessing and resource for them, but also for people who do struggle with anxiety. And I'm sure all of us struggle with a form of it. Maybe some of it's not chronic or anything, but we live in a very world that can be very demanding and challenging, and just the way it changes in all the time and everything. And so unless we really, really anchor ourselves in God, we're gonna spin. And so let's bring this though back through the lens of anxiety so that we have a wide swath here that people can understand, like wherever they are on the scale, from
Yeah.
overwhelm to peace.
Yes. So for myself, my own story with mental health goes all the way back to my really where some of my first memories are. Talk about this a little bit in the book just to kind of help give context that I have memories of having panic attacks in like third grade. And I didn't have the language for it, but so I would like try to explain it to a teacher, and it was always, and to my parents, but it was always passed off as like, I just worried a lot. Well, don't worry about that. Well, that's not that big a deal. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s and in my third round of depression and suicidal thoughts, at that point is when I called a mental health hotline. A friend actually encouraged me to do it. And at that point, when I called and I talked to them on the phone, was the first time that I was given language for anxiety. Up to that point, it was always, I worried too much. I wasn't praying enough. I didn't have much faith. Didn't have enough faith. I need to be in my Bible more. There was just all of these things that I was shaming myself and thinking I had to keep trying harder. Basically, I had to hold it all together. Like that was a thing that I was doing. Like, I feel like I'm falling apart. I need to get it together. I think that's something that often we'll say to ourselves in our head, there's so much going on. I got to get together. And when had the language for it is when could start healing. For a time, there was medication to kind of get me out of that depression and get me back to a baseline. I started seeing a counselor who has started help giving me a lot of different techniques and different things to help me when the anxiety is high. And from that time is where my ministry came out, because I know there's more out there who are believers, who love Jesus, who have their full faith in him, but yet have this anxiety that's knotted up inside and keeps them from really fully experiencing rest. And so my book speaks definitely to those that are anxious, even though in my title I use the word overwhelm. And this was actually something my editor and I went back and forth with, because it originally was feeling anxious. And we talked about, like, do we actually turn it to overwhelm? Because there are people that maybe when they see anxious, there are people out there like, oh, I'm not anxious, but they're very, very overwhelmed. And I've already had some reviewers come back who have read the book and said, like, I never would have called myself anxious, but after reading this book, I'm realizing like all of this overwhelm is leading to these feelings of anxiety. And when they're able to like name it, they're able to help root it out.
I had a very dark valley recently where I felt like I was, getting ready to put out a book, felt very overwhelmed, at the same time got a congestion, same time insomnia on top of that, and I felt like I was a madwoman. I was just felt, and then I realized though that even though I was reading my Bible and stuff, I wasn't clinging to Jesus. I was looking at all the possibilities of life spin around me rather than like your book says. It was basically that. Like I had to make a choice. Like, who am I going to cling to? Who am I going to listen to? Who am I going to, like, I don't have it all together, but God does. And so that's why your book is so beautiful in that sense, because it can speak to us in whatever season we're in. And you do bring in health, wellness experts in.
For each chapter, I went and interviewed a different professional that is in kind of the mental wellness, mental health space. And I gave them the chapter ahead of time, so they read through it. And so they already knew kind of the concept we were going to discuss, and they helped lend some of their professional insight on things. So in one of the chapters, I have a medical doctor who speaks into it, and I have a psychologist for another one. And then several of them are mental health professionals. They're counselors, they're therapists. One is a school counselor. And it was I felt like it helped give some depth to it as well, just kind of have another perspective of someone who actually is working with people who are struggling with overwhelm, with anxiety. That is their work that they're doing every day. And so it kind of helped, kind of lend into that a little bit more.
Yeah, I like that, because that will, again, whatever spectrum you're on, you're going to be able to kind of find your like the person who said to you, oh, I didn't realize I had anxiety, but this points. So you can see where you're at with it and everything like that, rather than Googling your symptoms.
Yeah.
So being overwhelmed has become almost a normal part of life.
Yeah.
How can someone tell when they've crossed the line from being busy
Mm.
into being overwhelmed?
Yeah. So we can have a full schedule and things are just, you're moving from one thing to the next. And that can be busy. You can look at a very busy schedule, but it doesn't necessarily have to be overwhelming if you are, if what you're doing, you're present. I think a lot of it has to be present in the moment and not like, well, I'm here, but I'm thinking about the next five things that I have to do. And then also, not only am I not present, but I'm trying to control all the outcomes of everything that is going on. You think of like toddlers, I think are really good when you watch them. They like something that I know I've said out loud and I've heard others say too, like, oh, he's just busy. Like you've got this, he's over here building his blocks, and then he's over here and he's taking this thing over here. And now he's pulling some things off the shelf. And then like he is very busy. He's doing lots of things. But if you asked him if he was overwhelmed, I don't think he would be overwhelmed because he's very present and purpose. I mean, he's very purposeful in building those blocks and then purposeful in pulling all those books off the shelf and then coming and asking for a snack. Like that toddler has a lot going on, but that toddler is not overwhelmed because it's that he is not worried about the outcome of whatever is happening. He's not worried about what is the next thing that they still have to get done. They are in the moment and focused and present. And the only way that can happen is not clamping down and try to get it all together. It's not organizing that planner because I love it. I'm all for planners, but there's only so much you can do. You will still feel overwhelmed. That will still come. But if you can focus on the fact that you need to be present in the moment and acknowledging that the spirit is with you, and then you're releasing whatever the outcome is. Like, God, you have placed this thing right here in front of me right now. I'm going to be present. I'm going to do what you've called me to do. And I'm going to trust you to bring whatever the outcome is of it. And then if I'm doing whatever and the thing goes, to pot, then I can still, like, if I'm holding things loosely, then I'm not going to get frustrated or overwhelmed with the fact that it's not going how I thought it would. Because then it would be like, okay, God, I guess we're shifting gears here. Like there's something about being present and then also not being in charge of the outcome.
And so, in a sense, it's not having control. It's just in control,
Yes.
right? And so,
Yes.
surrendering your outcome, surrendering it all, which I think you do talk about in the book.
Yeah. Yeah, the I kind of overarching the whole thing is the fact that we can either choose to build our own Eden of comfort and control, or we can choose the God's creation of Eden, where he is our ultimate comfort. He is the one who is in control. So building a false Eden on your own, the problem is you have to maintain it and you have to keep everything going. But when you're over here seeking after his gifts of Eden, you're trusting him to be the one who is in control. And before the fall happened, humans were given control. There was some stewardship in there where he said, like, okay, I've now put you in control over the plants and the animals. And so control was already something God gave us before the fall happened. But when the fall happened, that stewardship that he gave us, where we take care of and steward the people, the places, and the things in our lives, we steward it for his glory. But when the fall happened, it's distorted to the fact that now we're grasping for control instead of stewardship to how we want it to be. So that everything it gets distorted. So we're looking back to see what was present in Eden and how can we get back to seeking after that versus the distortion that sin has caused.
You talk about the difference between managing overwhelm, which is, I guess, that what we're trying to do, the grasping, right? And then the cultivating the peace. And so let's just give an example of like what are the differences between those two approaches, like just so we can get a visual, like of somebody starting their day, the person who's grasping, trying to manage their own overwhelm, and then the person who's cultivating peace.
Yes. I would just speak it from my own life and where I'm at right now, and the fact that I work full time on top of also speaking and writing. So I have a job that I'm also need to get up in the morning and get around for. But then I also have a husband who is a high school teacher. So he is also getting up in the morning at the same time all the kids are all getting up and they're all trying to get out the door at the same time to get to school. And so on top of making sure everybody's up, making sure everyone has breakfast and everyone has a lunch and they have all their sports equipment before they head out the door. Like there's all those things that I take on myself. There is I think a lot of the women tend to do this. We like to kind of take care. I mean, it's what's ingrained in us. We want to take care of all the people around us. But we start to take all of it on ourselves. And it's and so we're trying again to like control all the things. I'm trying to get all the breakfast done. I'm trying to get all the lunches done. I'm trying to get making sure they have all the things they need. And then I put like there was a lot of me in that statement. Like that's all me. That's all on me to make sure they have what they need versus and that's very overwhelming. That's a very overwhelming morning versus I delegation is something that can be so hard to do. But acknowledging like what are things that are actually things that can be done by other people? What are things that even are necessary? I think that we also will add in all these things like these have to be done. We should on ourselves all the time. We put these expectations of these shoulds. What should a morning look like before they head out the door? And so we already have like set this high expectation for ourselves versus acknowledging which things can be done by others. And then also, if it happens to be a morning where things just aren't going the way they are, how you want them to be, to allow things to be let go. And then it's not, doesn't ultimately reflect on who we are. I think that we will label ourselves or we'll put this expectation on ourselves. And if we don't meet that expectation, we then label ourselves like we've fallen short. When the fact that that we need to separate our identity from all of these little tasks that have to get done. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that if we don't do, I'm just thinking in my own life when I tend to do that, I become more like oh it's all on me, and then become resentful, and then
Yes, resentment is huge. And so there's a part of me I'm like, I do like to serve my family. I do like to take care of them. But honestly, like packing lunches is like the worst. I don't know why, but I have, I just do not enjoy them. But to help get them out the door, I end up kind of taking that on myself. But it has to be something that I just say to my kids, like, hey, I've got something else. I have to leave the house early this morning. I'm going to need you guys to jump in and pack your lunch. And then step back and let them do whatever they're going to do for a lunch. If they choose to throw a bag of chips and a piece of bologna in, then that's what they've done for themselves. And I think, like, again, that's like a control of the outcome, like allowing it to be something else than what I have necessarily pictured in my head.
yeah, and that's the other part of it because you can't allow us to say, okay, I'm going to allow you to do it, and then want,
Then step in.
which I see that not do that, have done that.
Yes.
What is your hope that this book will change the reader, how they think about the relationship with God when they feel overwhelmed?
Yeah. I I hope it helps the reader see parts in their life where they have taken on the control and the comfort for themselves and helping them move towards a place where they can start to release those things and being able to fully say, I don't have to hold it all together because he is the one who is.
That is so beautiful and powerful and a relief when
Yeah.
when you really realize and a choice too.
Yeah.
A choice. Was there a chapter or concept in the book that was especially difficult or vulnerable for you to write?
Yes. I would say the chapter that was the hardest was the chapter on belonging. So there's another concept of Eden is the fact that God said it was not good that a person was alone. Like he created another person. Like this human was surrounded by animals, like had all the animals and was naming them all and had all of, but it wasn't enough. Like they needed another human. And it is still true today. We are created to need other people. Like we all have this desire to belong. And it was a hard chapter for me to write because friendship has always been a hard thing for me as far as like getting having really close friends. Like throughout my school years, it was always, I would say I was always like the B list friend where I was friends with everybody, but I was never the person that like who was number one. Like they're calling me tell me of the great news of something. If they wanted to go do something, I was the one they asked. I was always like, down the list. If all these people couldn't make it, we'll ask Nichole. I was always and I was always one that like they were willing to ask to come along because I was just kind of I was a people pleaser. I was a friendly personality, but I wasn't necessarily that. I didn't really just had like that best friend connection. And so it's something that like things that happen to us in our childhood, they can kind of create those hard things that follow us throughout our lives. Even if we've healed from them and we have the perspective of age, there's still things that stick with you. And so writing a chapter on the fact that like we all desire to belong and that we all need other humans. And what does it look like to cultivate friendships, but not just like a friendship, but like true community. And it's not just finding like your BFF, but it's having those communities of people that are there for you in the hard times, not just in the good. And a lot of that takes vulnerability. We are not going to build community if we're not being vulnerable with one another.
I think that that's such an important part right there because that creates the bond
Yeah. And that's something
between.
that like I went back to like when I said delegate, when I mentioned that earlier, like that is a part of like when you have community, like there are people you can fall back on and they want you to fall back on them. Like there is this honor. If you have someone who's like struggling or someone who needs help and they send you a text to be like, "Hey, I just can't do such and such today. Can you step in and do this thing for me?" And you're like someone who's in your community, you're like, "I feel so honored that you asked me to help you." And so, like, if we feel honor in that, why don't we do that to others? Like when we are asking others to help us, like we don't think of it as like, oh, I'm showing them a way that they can help me. In fact, instead we see it as like, oh, I don't want to be a burden. And so we try to do it all ourselves. And again, God is like, I never asked you to hold it all together. I
Ask for
I
help.
created, yes, I created you to have community. Go and seek it. And I speak into it too, like seeking community and building community can be hard. Like it doesn't always come easy and naturally. And I kind of speak into that a little bit more in the book too, just reassurance for those where it comes hard.
And perhaps that earlier experience with it has helped you be sensitive to it and then
Mhm.
God teaching you how to have it because the way the world or society or culture teaches you how to friendship is not at all the way that God teaches you how to have friendship. So, Nichole and I have been talking about her beautiful new book that's coming out, and it's going to be such a wonderful resource for all of us because we have to admit that there is a lot of overwhelm in our lives in our world, and at the same time we don't have to hold it all together as her book says, and that we can cultivate the peace of Eden when feeling overwhelmed. And I love that whole idea. And before we go into our signature beauty questions, I do want you to talk about your summit that you're that
Oh,
you're having with the women of Eden. I just love that
yeah.
concept so much, and I get to be one of them. But
Yes.
so let's talk about that and your pre-order too.
Okay. Yeah. The I the Women of Eden Summit, virtual summit is one of those pre-order bonuses. So on May 12th, there's going to be 10 women that I have had conversation with, recorded conversation. There'll be videos. Each hour a new one will upload. And at the of these 10 interviews, you're going to hear from these women that are from different parts in life. You've got some young ones, we've got some that are retired, we've got some that are right in the middle of raising kids, and all of them are experiencing overwhelm in some way. And so we just have this honest conversation about like, what does life look like right now for your overwhelm? How do you cultivate that piece of Eden in your life in this overwhelming season or whatever season that they're in? And yeah, I'm really excited for it. As we talk, each one has like a just a different theme that comes out of it. It's not even something I've tried. It just is something that the Lord has just brought out. And so I'm hoping that each one of those will speak to the women or the ones who purchase the book and get the bonus and just help them see the overwhelm in their life and how they can release it and cultivate God's peace.
And
And
kind of
so yeah, that
lead
one.
in and then lead into the book. Like it'll prepare them kind of,
Yes.
if we
Yeah, it's
want to go
kind of a
back to
precursor.
the garden thing, it was kind of
Yes. Yep.
preparing the soil.
Yep. Yeah. And then my another pre-order bonus is a downloadable devotion. So it's called Held Together, 21 reminders that you don't have to do it alone. And this was me collaborating with 20 other writers and authors. Each of us took a different concept from Eden that is talked in the book. We've kind of parsed it out a little bit, and each woman has written a little bit about this concept of Eden that's present here today to help you turn back to the Father, trusting Him to be the one to hold it all together, to remind you that you do not have to do it alone. And so
Hmm.
just purchasing one copy of my book, there will be a download or a button for you to go to. You plug in your confirmation number, you'll get this free download. And then there'll be a separate one too if you want to join the summit. You can use the same confirmation number. You don't have to buy one book and then go buy another book. It can be one book. You can get to both things.
Wow, that is a beautiful offering for your book. So we're going to go into our signature kind of little bonus ending beauty questions for these Beholder Beauty podcast. And we're going to kind of relate them through this lens of overwhelm and Eden. And so, finding beauty. Have you ever struggled with your beauty?
Yes. I think it's so I'm a perfectionist. So there's always going to be some flaw or something that I'm just haven't been happy with. And so it's been something of just growing in trusting God, I guess, for the identity of who I am versus what I look like. And I think some of that has changed since like when my daughters were born. Like when you start raising daughters and you're looking at like, okay, how am I viewing myself? How can I speak to them and say like you are beautiful and God created you in his image and he doesn't make mistakes, like all these things that I'm telling them, like I needed to start saying those same things to myself. And I needed to also model that for my girls, like giving myself grace for when it comes to like, I mean, there's just, we're women and you go through the cycle of the month, and there's some days you just feel really terrible. And you look in the mirror and you're like, wow, you look like a totally different person from the day before. And so just having to to learn that like some of these things are passing and just being like, you know what? This is just not a good day. But that doesn't change my value. It doesn't change my worth. And I like that is kind of like, I think that's like the deep rooted struggle that I've had.
Mm. And
Yeah.
so, through the lens of overwhelm, so say you're having an overwhelming morning and you look in the mirror, how does it? So, I guess you kind of just answered that. How does it help us to see ourselves through God's eyes?
Yeah. And I think also when I'm feeling undervalued, like myself, I don't value myself or I feel worthless, something to act that. I mean, first and foremost is that reminding ourselves of the truth of whose we are and who really defines us. But then also just doing something that cares for our body. So maybe it's just like doing a skincare routine. It is like doing like an extra, like a mask or like something that's just a little bit more to be to give ourselves grace, kind of like
Mhm.
some little gift of goodness to
Yeah, kind
treat
of nurturing,
ourselves to.
kind of
Yes, the
nurture ourselves. We
nurturing.
we spend a
Yes.
lot of time nurturing others, but we need
Yes.
to nurture ourselves too,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
allow that. And so that kind of brings us into our next area, which is our self care. And so, what is your go to beauty soul care tip? And this can be inner or outer, it can be your favorite lipstick, skincare tip, Bible-verse, or all of the above.
Well, I do not wear a lot of makeup, and even if I had makeup, I don't even know how to apply it. You would have to like give me the lessons. So I mostly have just been, it's just good skincare and sunscreen. Wear sunscreen. Even if you don't think it's a very sunny day, I have always put sunscreen on in the morning and always wash my face before bed. Even though no matter how tired I am, there's just like, I mean, it takes 2 minutes, but there's something about like just completely wiping off the day's dirt and starting fresh.
So, encouragement. A final word for the woman who's having a hard time seeing her own beauty today.
Mm, yeah, so this is something that very personal in my life right now. I have a daughter who she's in recovery, but we have been working through an eating disorder for a number of years. And along with eating disorders is that body dysmorphia. Like it doesn't matter, like to look in the mirror, she sees a completely different person than what we see. And having one of the things that I've had to learn is that like when someone says like, "Oh, I'm just so ugly," or "I feel ugly," or whatever, to come back and be like, "Oh no, you aren't." Like that's actually not a helpful thing at all. But what we need to come back with is truth. And I think like that's kind of going back to what I was saying earlier about identity. It's like we needed to like for every thing that we tell ourselves, like as far as like I am ugly or I feel fat or I like these negative things about ourselves, we need to find scripture that counteracts that and says like what is actually the truth, because all these things over here that we're telling ourselves, they're all lies.
Hmm.
And that is where the enemy wants to keep us, because when we feel worthless, we don't feel like we can do anything.
Right.
But when we have the truth fed into us, and so when we start thinking that, we turn back and be like, no, I'm not this because of this is what God says about me.
Mm.
So I think just finding the truth in scripture to counteract those lies.
I think that is, yeah, that's so important.
Like not only just GLPs, but like how much stuff is out there about being thin. Like this thing about us being small and looking young. I'm just like, there is such like glory and honor in aging. Like it is a gift that you get to be here this long and serve your Lord for this long. Like why are we trying to reverse that kind of thing? And like to be thin often is like you don't have the energy. You're not really enjoying a lot of the gifts of like food is like there's so much food out there to be enjoyed, but also is healthy, like but also is nourishing, but also is delicious.
Yes,
And
yes.
like God could have just created food to be like so bland and you're just supposed to ingest it to keep yourself going. But he created food to be something to
Yes,
to draw people together. You sit around a table and you enjoy
yes,
food
yes.
together. Like there's
To
so much of this stuff that we shortchange and we lose.
yeah, to celebrate. And no, I agree. I mean, I had an eating disorder in high school. It was bulimia was the other,
Oh,
but I was trying to get anorexia. I mean, it was like
wow.
so your minds are so crazy. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
and it was, thank goodness it was very short-lived because I wanted to sing, and for some reason I knew that that would ruin my throat.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Oh my
No,
goodness.
I'll have to think a lot of it is definitely the enemy because,
Oh, yeah.
like you just said, we can't be our full selves, fully present if we have that burden. You can't do it on your own. That's what
No.
your book's all about. You can't do it on your just had this wonderful, wonderful conversation today, and I'm so grateful that you're here with us, Nichole, and that you've written this book, and that all these exciting things are going on with it. And so let's first let people know where they can find you.
Yes. So I have my website, livewithintent.org. And there you can sign up for my weekly devotional that I send out. You can also find the book as well as my other books that I've written. You can pre-order it there, as well as the pre-order bonuses are there as well. Pretty much anything that I have to offer, you can find at that website. And I also am active on Instagram. I'll often share mental wellness tips and encouragement there at Nichole J Suvar. And Nicole has an H in the middle of it.
Wonderful, wonderful. And would you like to say a closing prayer for us?
Yes, I would love
Okay.
to. Father, I pray for the one listening that they can release today with open hands their control and look to you to be the one that holds them all together. You have promised, you have told us that you are before all things, you are in all things, and through all things, and you are holding it all together. I just pray that we can fully realize that in our hearts and minds, and so that we can turn to you with open hearts and open minds and open palms and release it all to you, to trust you to be the one to hold us all together. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. That was beautiful. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, Nichole, thank you so much for coming on the Beholder Beauty podcast.
This was so fun. Thanks, Deborah.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining me today. My hope is that you'll leave this conversation a little more seen and a lot more loved by the one who created you. Don't forget to check our show notes for curated hope resources. So until next time, keep looking for the beauty. I'm Deborah Rutherford, and this is Beholder Beauty. I'm so excited about this season, about our guests, and I know you will be too. So subscribe, like, follow, leave a heart. We love all those things. And have a lovely, lovely day. Thank you for listening.